Is this the worst Hermes mistake ever? Let's talk about it. Now, does it involve their bag? The Birkin? Hello, co-host. Or as Carrie Bradshaw would say to her shoes, hello, lover. But no, my bag is not my lover. Matter of fact, my bag is always fighting against me for some awkward reason. But Hermes might have just made a really big mistake. What is it, say you, ask you? Well, I'ma tell ya. But first, subscribe to my channel, thumb up the video, and everything I say in this video is for entertainment purposes only, not rooted in truths or facts. Everything's alleged and just my opinion. There is a few articles and an interview out there with a certain someone talking about Hermes and how they were approached by Hermes to do something, and they said no. And I have here bits and bobs of the article. Hermes, the luxury French fashion house, once considered naming a handbag after Jane Birkin, and they got it. Grace Kelly, and they got it. Jane Birkin said, yeah, you can do it. She settled with them and said proceeds, can go to charities of her choice, because she was a very charitable lady. Awesome woman, great artist too, great singer and actress. I'll never forget her performance in Death on the Nile with Peter Ustinov as Hercule Poirot, the Agatha Christie film version of her novel. Yeah, Jane Birkin was in it. And she was really good in it. And that was back in the 80s, right about the time when the Birkin's inception just happened. But no, this is another lady that Hermes apparently contacted back in the early 90s. So envision this. We are just almost a decade away from the inception of the Birkin, because the Birkin was conceived in the early 80s. And 10 years pass, more or less, and Hermes started thinking, well, we should kind of also launch a new bag. We've done Kelly, back in the 60s, 50s, then nothing until the 80s, then the Birkin in the 80s. Now in the 90s, it's time for another little revival. Who's the most famous personality in the world of the arts or fashion at the moment that we consider really cool? They picked Claudia Schiffer. Let that sink in. Let me blend in Claudia Schiffer for those of y'all who don't know who the lady is. This is the lovely lady. This is one of her recent photos. Credit to Claudia Schiffer's Instagram account. So this is from her Insta, or credit to I don't know who, but it is on Insta. And here's what happened. As Claudia Schiffer reported in an interview, by the way, she does look fabulous. Still to this day, I adore her. She said that back in the day, when she was Karl Lagerfeld's it girl, the Chanel girl, okay? When she was top of the world. You remember the mid-90s Barbie collection at Chanel? Like, that was all the rage with the heart bag that then the Barbie movie kind of redid again in pink for Margot Robbie as Barbie with the Chanel logo on it. Yeah, that was all first in the 90s, done by her. Well, worn by her, designed by Karl. So Claudia Schiffer gave an interview, and they said, like, one of the biggest things that you regret. And she says, well, one of the biggest things I regret was when I was at the height of my career, back in the day, in the 90s, Hermes actually approached me, she says, so I gotta say allegedly. Hermes approached me and they were like, we would really like to make a new bag design and give it your name. And we would like to work with you. Just like we did with Jane, when she sketched out on a napkin in the airplane the idea of what bag she would like for her diapers and her child and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, we all know Birkin, the diaper bag. Thank you, Jane. The cheapest diaper bag out there. So, Claudia was approached by Hermes, and they asked her not just to use her name, but they said, we would also like you to, I don't know, design it with us. Give us your input. What sort of bag do you need for your lifestyle? We already designed the diaper bag. Maybe now we can design a bag for a top model that is, jet setting around the world. And maybe you can help us design a bag that will suit a vibrant young woman's active lifestyle. Well, guess what? Claudia, like a good German, she did not make a choice on her own. She went to her manager or agent, well, somebody who was managing her, and she talked to them about this. And apparently her management was the one that told her, "Don't do it. Don't do it." So then she listened to her management or her agency or whatever, whoever was responsible for this decision, and she said no to Hermes. To this day, she regrets it. I would too. First of all, can you believe, like, having a legacy like that your entire life? Like, how can you decide to not do something like that? But fine, we can sit here and be sad, upset about this. I'm sure she's even more upset than we ever could be, because not only did she lose the money, but she also lost the privilege of an iconic bag that could have been in circulation like 40 years by now or 30 years by now, since the 90s. You do the math. I'm terrible at math. But we digress. But here's my point. We can sit here and cry about missed opportunities. I think Claudia Schiffer is still probably super wealthy, successful, and she made also some choices that brought her a ton of money in her career and life anyway. So I think she did really well for herself even without Hermes dedicating a bag to her. I'm not worried about her. I think she's still super successful, amazing, rich, and beautiful, and whatever have you. But here's my question, you guys. At the end of all of this, us bag lovers, what I really want to know is what bag would she have designed with Hermes, A, and B, because I believe Hermes already had an idea of the direction in which they wanted to go with a bag that they would name after her. So my question is, what do you guys think of the bags that Hermes released in the 90s, a year or so after they asked Claudia to collaborate with them? Which one of those bags might have been the Claudia bag? Because, mind you, Hermes did try some new designs in the 90s. They did release some bags that were new to them in the second half of the 90s, in the first half of the 90s. So I am really curious now to know which one of those bags could have been named the Claudia. And not only that, but this also shows us how brand marketing works. Because trust you me, there are Hermes bags out there that are far more practical. As much as I love the Birkin for its heritage and everything, and I have one, but there are Hermes bags out there that are a gazillion times more practical than the Birkin, that are a gazillion times more functional. I mean, just opening this thing up is a task. There are Hermes bags out there that are not quota bags. So meaning there are Hermes bags out there that are easier to get, that also cost less. Just to name, Bolide, for example, is a masterpiece of a bag, in my opinion. Plume, also, love it to bits. Like, these are all bags that don't really have the reputation that the Birkin and the Kelly have, just because of brand marketing. So I wonder, what do you guys think? Let me know down below. Which bag do you think from the 90s, like as new released designs from Hermes, which one of them could have been the Claudia bag had she allowed them to use her name? And second point, had she allowed them to use her name for said bag, do you think that bag would today be as iconic as the Kelly and the Birkin, and to some degree also the Constance? What do you guys think? Yeah, Joy Love C says, I think the bolide for Claudia, but the bolide already existed way back in the 20s even. So they would have to, but technically the Birkin also existed as a Huck before Jane redesigned it. So maybe Claudia would have redesigned the bolide, tweaked it a little bit to call it the Claudia. It's a possibility. Nikki says garden party could be her one. But I'm just thinking, like, we would have to really go in depth and analyze which Hermes bags were launched for the first time in the 90s, and then see which one of those might have been the one they thought to use for Claudia. I'm really interested to know this. I would love to be a fly on that wall in those archives at Hermes, to know, to go through their books, to go through all of their, thought process, ideas, stuff that was published, not published, that went into production, ideas that didn't make it all the way to production. Oh my gosh, this is the stuff that I geek out on. This is the stuff that makes me love a brand even more. I know a lot of people, they just love to see who on social media has what bag and what expensive car, and then they get the FOMO. I could not care less about any of that. I love history, heritage, design ideas, advertisement campaigns that maybe didn't go through, the reasons why, what political movement inside of the company made some decision go in that direction instead of that direction. These are the things, the intricacies that make me really kind of, want to grab my Birkin and hug it again, Seeing some bimbo on social media show it off, unboxing the 50th Birkin yet again, makes me want to vomit and not want to touch my Birkin anymore. But learning the history and the heritage of a brand in these little nuances is what actually makes me love my Birkin. Catch my drift? Akulu says, I just looked at a list of all the main Hermes bags, but none were introduced in the 90s that are now iconic. Bingo. Hence why I believe they were also very much into this idea of needing a big name attached to a bag in the 90s, because they really needed to revitalize their brand, because they were not that huge in the 90s. And they were still many years away from that mythological Sex and the City episode where Samantha really wants to get the Birkin with Lucy Liu. That's what made the Birkin, again, even more immortal. But there's a whole period between the 80s and that episode of Sex and the City in the late 90s, early 2000s, I think it was in the early 2000s, there's a whole decade in between, even more so than a decade, where Hermes, yeah, it was popular. People knew Hermes, but it was not at the level of popularity that it got after that Sex and the City episode. Very interesting. Very, very interesting. So let me know your thoughts down below. Which bag could it have been? Subscribe, thumb up the video. Let's get to 100K. Love you loads. Never give up on love. Bye.